The ethical dilemma I researched and am presenting is the crashes of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. The Boeing 737 MAX was produced to compete with Airbus, designed to be fuel efficient with a low operating cost. The plane was estimated to emit 277,000 fewer tons of CO2 and save $85 million. Unfortunately, this aircraft was not the success that Boeing had hoped for. Two crashes of this aircraft occurred, killing all members on board. These crashes happened within 5 months of each other with similar causes, and both occurred within the first 12 minutes of the flight. The aircraft was grounded internationally soon after. An important metric of flight is a plane's angle of attack, which describes the angle between the wing and the airflow. To understand the cause of the crashes, we have to understand the design of the plane. The massive engines of the 737 MAX were too big to fit under the wing, so they were shifted in front. But this changed where the thrust from the engines was being applied. When the pilots applied power to the engines, the plane would raise its nose, or pitch up. This could cause the plane to stall and fall if the pilots were to apply a lot of power to the engine suddenly. The entirety of the design would increase the propensity to continue to pitch up continuously. Boeing relied on the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS, to avoid this aerodynamic stall. When MCAS software is activated, it pushes the pilot's control columns forward with a significant amount of force when the sensors read too high of an AOA. As this did not change the hardware of the plane, which is time-consuming and expensive, it meant that the FAA would not have to recertify the plane. The design of the 737 MAX was meant to be similar enough to the other 737 models that more pilot training would not be needed to fly it. An investigation by the U.S. federal government after the crashes found 5 themes in this dilemma. First, Boeing made strides to cut costs, maintaining a schedule to avoid slowing the production of the 737 MAX. As stated previously, this design was inherently faulty. Boeing then withheld important information and made incorrect, deadly assumptions about the plane. Also, Boeing provided some of its own oversight, creating a conflict of interest. The company did not disclose changes to the aircraft from previous versions affecting the pilot's ability to control the plane. It was not regulated effectively. Lastly, Boeing overruled its own technical experts about the aircraft. The ethical issue I focused on was the matter of self-regulation. What are its strengths and its weaknesses? Personally, I thought that this issue boiled down to efficiency versus accountability. How much of a benefit does in-house regulation provide in terms of the ease of communication, scheduling, etc.? Then, how can we as consumers hold companies accountable if they regulate themselves? For my interview, I spoke with Skylar Manteuffel, an aerospace engineer. On the moral issue, Manteuffel stated that internal regulation would be more efficient, easier to schedule and meet. But it's easy for a company to then pick and choose what boxes in the approval process get evaluated. They could cherry-pick certain requirements to check and completely ignore others. Going forward, Manteuffel wants to focus on the lack of training and testing, which he found frustrating. Boeing emphasized that this plane was not different, which avoided extensive testing and completely misled the pilots. The engineers were unable to properly test the craft, pilots were unable to actually learn how to pilot the plane, and the overall engineering process was shortened. Manteuffel stated they were too hasty in the software system in particular, not giving it enough testing. Manteuffel stated that, quote, testing is an integral part of the design process, end quote, and has negative effects when not enough emphasis is placed on it. He was also frustrated with the strong competition and financial motivation, signaling that this was the main root cause of the dilemma. I gained a lot from the interview and project process. In reflection on the interview, I found I was focusing more on the ethical side of the issue, being that Boeing shielded themselves from external regulation, rather than focusing on the issue through the lens of an engineer. A perspective that Manteuffel brought up was the fact that there was not enough rigorous testing. More testing would have revealed the issues within the software system. Lastly, in the midst of this project, the FAA Administrator Steve Dickson signed an order that rescinded the emergency order of prohibition of use of this aircraft. This will create a way for the 737 MAX to return to service. Officials expect that it will take time for passengers to overcome understandable hesitance, but expect it won't take long to restore the confidence in this aircraft.